Hey Christy, I had an idea for a special holiday episode of the podcast. Would you like to hear about it?
Absolutely, I would. Hit me with it.
I thought we could look at who have been the most popular guests with our listeners from previous episodes, and we could ask them to come back and chat with us again.
Great idea. I love it. So that means we'll talk to Dr. Jo Wimpenny, who we spoke with about her super cool book, Aesop's Animals.
And it also means we'll talk to Dr. Marc Bekoff, who we spoke to about his books, The Emotional Lives of Animals, and actually lots of his books we talked about before.
And our other guest will be trainer extraordinaire Erica Beckwith. In addition to speaking with our amazing guests, we can also talk to each other about our holiday rituals and our own highlights for this year.
And we can do a book section too. I can't wait. So let's go talk to Dr. Jo Wimpenny, the episode where we talk to her about Aesop's animals. It gets new listeners every single week. It's been really popular. Jo Wimpenny is a zoologist and writer with a research background in animal behaviour and the history of science. She studied zoology at the University of Bristol and went on to research problem solving in crows for her DPhil at Oxford University.
After postdoctoral research on the history of ornithology at Sheffield, she co-authored the book 10,000 Birds, Ornithology Since Darwin, with Tim Burkhead and Bob Montgomery, which won the 2015 Prose Award for History of Science, Medicine, and Technology. She's the author of Aesop's Animals, and we heard she's got exciting news too, so stay tuned for that.
Thanks for joining us today, Jo.
Great to be here.
Let's start by talking about the ant and the grasshopper fable, which we briefly touched on last time we talked to you, but there's really quite a lot to dig into here. So, first of all, what does the fable say about ants and grasshoppers?
Mm. Yeah, it's one of my favorite fables actually, and it's probably one of the more well-known of the bunch, I think. So the gist of the fable is that it's a fine winter's day, and the ants are busy storing up grains, taking them inside and drying them out, taking them in and storing them over the winter. And then a grasshopper passes by, and the grasshopper is dying of hunger and begs for some food from the ants. And they say to him, well, why have you not stored up your own food? And the grasshopper says, well, I didn't have time. I was far too busy having fun and frolicking in the sunshine and singing and all of these sorts of things. And so the ants say, well, if you danced all summer, then you must go to bed hungry over the winter, or words to that effect. So from my perspective, interesting in the sense that it portrays the ants as being capable of thinking ahead, and planning for the future, whereas the grasshopper is very much depicted as an animal that lives very much in the present and only works to satisfy its current needs.
I think if the phrase the moral of the story hops into my mind, that would be one of the stories that is like you'd use to describe that idea. Yeah. Um,
Definitely.
so I went back and I reread that chapter before we spoke today, and you begin the chapter talking about a crow named Pierre, which I had forgotten, and I was really interested to hear. I mean, everyone I think enjoys hearing about crows and other corvids. They're so fascinating. They're so interesting to us. So tell us the tricks that Pierre used to get up to that you were talking about in this chapter.
Yeah, sure. Pierre he was a great bird. He was in the same cohort as Betty, the famous crow, and he was a really good experimental bird in the sense that he was willing to participate in all the experiments. And he was sort of a good one. He knew you could get things done with Pierre, but he was a little bit wily as well. And so in this one particular experiment, I was asking whether the crows could string together sequences of using tools. So basically, could they use one tool to retrieve another tool which is out of reach, um, and then use that tool to get the food? So the tool that they had access to was very short, and they needed to use it to retrieve a longer one. And this is something that Pierre did. Um, but sometimes he did two things which were slightly annoying from my perspective as a PhD student, sitting there trying to figure out how to analyze these data. The first thing was that sometimes once he'd solved the problem, and pulled out the long tool and got the food, he would then just leave my little testing room with that tool. And he was very quick. So the crows had free access to leave the room whenever they wanted. And he would just take the tool and like hurtle back into his home aviary. And I would have to come out of my little testing area and go into his aviary and see if I could find the tool. And if I was quick enough, then I would catch him dropping it or, putting it somewhere. But if I was not quick enough, then I would go into the aviary and he would just kind of be sat there on a little perch, whacking, whack, whack, whack at me. And I wouldn't be able to find the tool. And this happened a few times, and it was only after we were cleaning out the aviaries and replacing their bedding that we found the tools, and we found this little stash of items in the corner of the aviary. There, a couple of tools in there, some of his Lego blocks, because he liked playing with Lego blocks, some little pieces of dried up food. And it was like a little treasure hoard of Pierre's things that he'd stashed there. And the other thing that he would do is occasionally just bring his own tool into the testing arena. So he would just bypass the problem altogether, and just bring in a tool that was long enough to go directly for the food.
That's amazing.
Fantastic. It was like he showed he was so much more flexible in what he was doing. But of course, I was trying to score these things according to he did this particular thing, or he did this particular thing. And that made it really difficult to try and write up the results.
I love that. It's so clever and so fun as well to hear about. Yeah, I think most people listening, when they think of animals planning ahead, we all think of the squirrel. And, I've seen lots and lots of squirrels burying nuts in my yard this autumn. And we think of that as planning for the future because they're storing them up for the spring or whenever they come back to eat them. But that's actually not enough to show forward thinking, planning ahead, is it?
No, so it all sort of comes under the broad category of planning, really, and it looks like future planning because what they are doing is, you know, literally doing something which will equip them for future needs, in that they will come back and dig up those nuts, and we know that they can remember some of the places that they store them. So it's not like they are little robots just going around burying and happening on them again over the winter, but it doesn't qualify for the sort of future planning that we're capable of. For example, when we mentally sort of project ourselves into an imagined future state where we might think, well, in a few months' time, I might want to book a holiday because I know that I might be, I might need a break from a. So there's no evidence that squirrels are thinking ahead in that way and sort of projecting themselves into this future state and thinking, well, I'm going to need to store this food because over the winter I know that there won't be as much food available, and I can imagine that I will be hungry. And it's kind of the same situation for birds that are migrating as well, and for animals that go into hibernation as well. It's not so much that they're aware of the future need, but they have evolved over a long time to sort of have these genetic programs whereby they can react appropriately to things like decreased day length, decreased light levels, and this just triggers a program inside the brain which sort of says, okay, now activate nut burying. So there's a distinction there. It looks like they're planning for the future, but it's planning in a much simpler way than what we do.
Hmm. So the grasshopper isn't going to survive the winter. So they don't actually have to plan for the spring, which I think was sort of decreases the moral power of the story once you realize that.
Yeah.
And also it's like, to me, that's the moral, is have fun.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's like, but then you start talking about ants, which they're so fascinating. I also find them, like, I don't get squidged out by a lot of things, but I find ants a little squidge making for myself. So I had to overcome that a bit as I'm reading the story.
Okay.
But there's lots of different types of ants that you mentioned in the book, and they have these fascinating behaviors. Zazie reminded me about this idea of teacher ants. So can you tell us about the research on teacher ants? Like what's going on there?
Yeah, it's really cool research. Teaching is one of these behaviors that for a very long time we thought was something that only humans did. And of course, when people were thinking which other animals might we look in to find evidence for teaching, they were looking at chimpanzees and they were looking, at the other great apes. And actually, the first evidence for teaching in animals came from ants. And this was a study on a behavior called tandem running, which is when the ants are uh, showing each other really where a new colony is. So it's when they're moving colonies, and the ants that have learnt the route need to show other ants how to get there. And they do it through this behavior called tandem running, where the naive ant basically just follows the teacher ant, and she'll sort of keep her antennae touching the teacher ant's abdomen and sort of and the ant in front leads it towards the nest, and it fulfills the criteria for teaching in that the ant in the front clearly sort of behaves in a way that's directed towards the naive ant behind. So occasionally it will stop, and it lets the ant behind kind of look and sort of learn the landmarks along the route. It clearly pays a bit of a cost for showing the behavior because it's much, much slower. While it's doing that, it's not feeding and it's not doing other things that would be more beneficial, perhaps. And the third criteria is that the naive ant that's being led, is actually learning. So these three things need to be demonstrated in order to fulfill the criteria for something being thought of as teaching. And so this was the first evidence for it. So very cool that it came from ants. And I think that really surprised a lot of people. That
Yeah,
these little
absolutely.
these are the ones that show it. And why is it not chimpanzees?
And I just adored it that you said at some point when enough of the ants have moved, they're like, you know what, enough is enough, and they just pick up the other ants and just carry them. And I'm like, I've been there, ant. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'll just write the assignment for you. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. It's like enough of you know how to get there now. We're just going to carry the rest of you because yeah.
I love that, and I love that your book Aesop's Animals is full of cool science like this about all different kinds of animals. And we heard that you actually have some very exciting news about a new book too. Can you tell us about that?
Certainly. Yes, so my new book is called Beauty of the Beasts, and it comes out here in the UK in February, and it'll be with you guys in at the end of April. I think it's April the 28th. Um, and it's kind of it leads on a little from Aesop's Animals in that I'm still considering the ways in which we relate to other animals. But this one is really focused on the animals that we don't like so much. Um, so I am taking a look. I mean, I kind of think of it as like my love letter to the underloved, the animals that we find scary or disgusting or annoying, or the ones that we don't support because we don't think they're attractive or charismatic. So I'm trying to kind of look at all of these different groups of creatures and then shine a light on all the things that are fascinating about them and the reasons why we should value them, both in terms of what's going on in their brains and some of the incredible behaviors that they show, and also in terms of their ecological roles. So, sort of cover the spectrum of unpopular creatures from sharks and crocodiles through snakes, disgusting things like you said, Kristi, the ants give you, make you feel a bit ick.
Yeah.
So, all the
Yeah.
the various creepy crawlies or the animals that ooze things and secrete things. And insects are undergoing catastrophic population decline. So we need people to be caring about them a little bit more and to value them more. So that's kind of the thrust of the book.
Very cool.
I
And my
can't
species
wait.
at risk work. Oh, go ahead, sorry, Zazie.
No, I was just saying I can't wait to read it. So I think it's we know it's available for pre-order now, and I'll put that link in the show notes too. Go on,
Thank
Kristi.
you.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back. But
Yes.
yeah, I was gonna say it spurred this thought when in my other work, I do species at risk work, and one of the species that we were looking at in the Northwest Territories, so in northern Canada, is a bumblebee. I can't remember what it's called. It's something cuckoo bumblebee, something like that. And it's a
Hmm.
bumblebee that's at risk that parasitizes other bumblebees. And I'm like,
Hmm.
oh man, this is a hard sell. You need a better publicist.
Yes, cuckoo bumblebees. Yeah, they do that. But I mean, I'm trying to also make a case for cockroaches and, why we shouldn't completely wipe out mosquitoes. And sometimes it's not so much that there's anything that you can particularly love about these animals, but more about the fact that everything's connected and we
Mm,
can't just pick and choose which animals get our attention and which animals get to be conserved. Otherwise, what sort of planet would it be? It would be a very strange place to live,
absolutely.
and it wouldn't function.
If you like birds, you should like insects. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. Well, thank you. It's been really nice to talk to you again, both about Aesop's Animals and Beauty of the Beasts, which I can't wait to read. So thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks so much, both of you. It's been lovely to chat again.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas too.
Let's talk about some of our highlights of the year. I know you've got some amazing highlights to share with me, Kristi. I'm going to go first, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Because I have to say, one of the highlights for me was that I got to see the paperback version of Bark published, which is awesome. It means that it can reach even more people and help them with their reactive, fearful, and anxious dogs. And actually, we did a really nice Ask Me Anything about reactive and fearful dogs to kind of celebrate the launch.
Right.
And so many people came to that, and it was amazing. And we had such brilliant questions that people asked as well. And the recording of that is out now too, and that's doing really well too. And it was an absolutely lovely event, and it was great to hear so much about how people care about their dogs and what they're trying to do to make life better for their fearful dogs. So that was really nice. That was a great highlight for me. And
Absolutely. And
I
go
heard
ahead.
that you won an award.
Yeah. So first of all, congratulations on the release of the paperback of Bark. That was amazing. It was lovely to see. And yeah, a team of my colleagues, researchers from the Gwich'in Tribal Council, who I work with, and also some researchers and from the University of Victoria, the Arctic Landscape Ecology Lab. Sorry, I just glitched there for a second. We put in an application to win this Frederick Paulson Arctic Academic Action Award. I believe that's the order of the words, but it's a lot of words, so I might have got it wrong. Yeah, it's an award for supporting research that is trying to sort of make a difference in how we're handling climate change in the world. So we put in an application. I didn't think that we had too great of a chance, to be honest. It was just sort of like, oh, we saw it. We might as well put in an application, and we ended up getting shortlisted. And then we won in this really quite unexpected ceremony at a conference that we went to that we were going to separately for and other presentations in Iceland. So it was all very cool. It's an unrestricted grant, so that means that we can really take this grant money and just run with it and do some really, really interesting research with the Gwich'in, who I work with and have worked with for many years, about how they categorize and understand their own lands. So it's pretty cool.
I think that is super cool. Many congratulations on that. It's just awesome. And to know that this gives you the funding to do really important research that's important to the Gwich'in and it's important for doing something about climate change too. I think that's just so, so cool.
Yeah, for sure. We feel very lucky.
Good, good. Well, I think that's awesome. And I guess for me, another one of the highlights was actually the Dogs in the City conference in Toronto, which was organized by Andrea Dinan. And it was a 3-day conference. And it was quite unusual in that each speaker gets a whole day to speak. So you get a lot of time to talk and to share, your knowledge with people. And the other two speakers were Tom Candy, who went first, and Milena de Martini, who was on the third day. So I was in the middle. And what was really nice is that everything we said, it just knitted together so well. Like Tom's day, Milena's day, and my day in the middle, it just worked perfectly together. So that was really nice to have all of us on the same page, sharing good information, and such lovely people who were at the conference too, as well. So it was a really fantastic experience. And actually, there was something that was nice for a personal reason too, because the speakers stayed in an Airbnb on West Queen West, and it turned out that it was literally just around the corner from the very first place that I stayed the very first time I came to Canada with my family when I was like 19 or 20.
Oh, wow.
Probably 20. And I was able to go and take a photo of that place where we had stayed then too. So that was like a nice bit of icing on the cake, as it were. It was just nice to go back and revisit that time as well.
Very cool. Very cool. And I heard great things about the conference. So that is congratulations on that as well.
Thank you. And I know you had some interesting travel. Apart from the Iceland trip, you had another interesting trip too, didn't you?
Yeah. So for the first time ever, the department that I work for at the Gwich'in Tribal Council hosted a camp for gender diverse and queer Indigenous youth. So it was called the Roots and Rising Camp for two Q-tips. That's two spirit, indigiqueer, trans and queer Indigenous people. And it was for young people at least the age of 18. So it wasn't for kids. And we spent a week out at a beautiful wellness camp that's just up the Mackenzie River from Inuvik in the beautiful Mackenzie Delta. And it's in September and October. It was just, it crossed over the months between September and October. So there was snow, the river was still open, but ice was just starting to form on the lakes. We had, it was, sort of the camp was led by our partners, which was Northern Youth Leadership and Community Camp NWT. And so they came up with this brilliant program, which included, on the land activities, so traditional activities, and then a lot of structured conversation and sort of exploring issues and finding safety and finding community. It was really, really cool. And it was the first sort of program that I'm aware of that was aimed at this constituency. So it felt really important and it as someone who has worked for them for a long time, but also who is queer, it felt like an interesting way that sort of parts of my different self came together.
That sounds really cool and like such an important experience for all the people who went on it as well. And I've never been to that part of the world, but I've seen photos that you sent me, and I know it's like a really beautiful place to go and spend time as well. So, yeah, that sounds really special.
It was. It
And
was very cool.
yeah, good, good. And I feel like our podcast is another highlight of the year too, because it's gone really well this year. It's been really fun chatting to all of the people. We decided this year to try and move to doing every fortnight, every 2 weeks instead of once a month. And that's gone really well. And it's been really lovely to get nice feedback from people who listen. So thank you to everyone who has written and told us that they've enjoyed the show and given us ideas for things to do in future as well. And I just think that's been really fun.
Absolutely.
So one of the people we spoke to this year was Marc Bekoff, and we had Marc Bekoff actually on here twice because he was part of Barkfest last year, and this year we put out the recordings from Barkfest, and they've been really popular, and lots of people said that they would love for us to get Marc back. So let's go talk to him.
So Dr. Marc Bekoff is a professor emeritus of ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of Colorado Boulder. He has published 31 books, or 41, depending on how you count multi-volume encyclopedias, and has won many awards for his research on animal behavior, animal emotions, cognitive ethology, compassionate conservation, and animal protection. He's worked closely with Jane Goodall as the co-chair of the ethics committee of the Jane Goodall Institute and as a former Guggenheim Fellow.
He also works closely with inmates at the Boulder County Jail, and in June 2022, Mark was recognized as a hero by the Academy of Dog Trainers. His recent books include Dogs Demystified, an A to Z guide to all things canine, the second edition of The Emotional Lives of Animals, and Jane Goodall at 90, celebrating an astonishing lifetime of science, advocacy, humanitarianism, hope, and peace. And he also publishes regularly for Psychology Today. Thank you for joining us today, Mark.
My pleasure, always.
So, your research, ethology, it's always involved observations of animals in natural settings, their natural environment. However, a lot of people put a lot of faith in experiments, but your observations are actually really, really important. So we wondered if you could speak a bit to the value of those observations.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a contest, I sometimes call it, between people who do controlled lab work and people who do field work. And so each of them has their benefits. I actually think field work well done is more important than lab work, but that's just my personal bias as a field worker. So lab workers often say, well, the research you're doing in the field is uncontrolled. And I say, well, yeah, it is, but I mean, we're really careful. We do films, we can verify the things we say on video, et cetera, et cetera. And the important thing there, especially when you're looking at social interactions, is that the animals as individuals can either join or get away from an interaction they don't like on their own. They're not caged, so they don't have to cower in a corner. Problem with captive research, although the quality might be great, I'm not, criticizing the quality of the research, is that number one, it's a certain number of animals, it could be dogs or other animals in a confined space from which they can't escape. And if they don't want to join an interaction, sometimes they're forced into doing it by a researcher or another animal. And might be controlled. You might actually be doing so much control that the animals don't have the opportunity to express their full repertoire of behavior. And the way I would summarize this is there's value in both, but I was told by a number of pretty high-end primate researchers and others that one reason they thought that the animals who they were studying in labs didn't do what they wanted them to do is because they were bored. And I've actually seen that in carnivores where they can do it. You see it all the time among wild animals, and they're probably sitting in a cage thinking, well, I'm not going to do this. I'd rather just sit here and watch the observers. So that's my quick and dirty on that question.
Yeah, I think I love reading your observations about dog parks because I feel like in some senses that is a bit of a wild environment for dogs, and so it's interesting to see that through the lens of a researcher, to be like, this is, and I also think, like there's a dog laying on the couch behind me. That's kind of a dog's natural environment is laying on the couch. So he's like, he's free to express his ethogram right now.
Right. I mean, the word that comes to mind, more academically, if you will, is agency. The animals have the freedom to make the decision of what they want to do. And your example, Kristi, of dog parks is really right on the mark because I've spent so much time there, and somebody will say to me, oh, I've read that dogs don't do this. They don't recognize. I mean, I don't mean to recognize in the sense that I recognize you two, but they from a distance they can sometimes tell when a dog who wants to play is approaching and when a dog who's not sure about it. Or sometimes it blows my mind, even when they're upwind, that they can identify a friend, probably using smell from quite a distance. So that's exactly the reason that I say we need to study free-ranging, free-running dogs. They don't have to be wild or feral, but they have to have the opportunity to express their own desires and also to express the full repertoire of, say, what it is like to be a dog or a cat. I've had cat people tell me this all the time, and the amount I know about cats could fit in the mouse of my computer. But sometimes people say that cats are even more finicky than dogs. And when you study captive cats and they can't feel that they're free to do what they want to do or need to do, they either don't do anything or they do something that's kind of, it could be assertive or aggressive. So it's just a balance once again, and I think people should just stop criticizing everybody and look at the positives of each type of research, but also realize their limitations.
Yeah, absolutely. So when Zazie and I were considering, what kind of things do we want to talk about in this? It's a holiday episode, and at least here in the northern hemisphere, holiday is snow, and so Zazie just jumped into this idea of penguins because I think she was inspired by your penguin research. So you've done some research on penguins in the Antarctic. Do you have any stories from that research?
Yeah, I love that question because people are asking me more about it now than perhaps decades ago when I did it. So my quick sort of penguins for dummies, or I don't mean real dummies, but or cliff notes is that number one, they don't all look alike. I mean, after you spend a lot of time with them, which we did, they really do look differently. Sure, you could confuse them at a distance. And one of the things that we use to basically identify them would be their personalities or their quirks. So one wonderful observation is these were Adelie penguins at Cape Crozier on Ross Island in Antarctica. They build these creches and nests of stones, and they steal stones from one another. So there were shy penguins who would basically be really careful. They'd stop and do exactly what you might do or a dog might do. They want your bone, they want your rag, they want your rope, they want your stick, and they look all around and they sneak in, grab it, and then run away, hoping no one has seen them. And then there's the real bold, assertive ones who just march in, stare another penguin in the face, and just take a rock and waddle away. And then you've got all shades of gray, if you will, among them. And the other thing that you really see is really dedicated parental behavior. And, they're birds. And, there's just a whole new lot of research on the cognitive and emotional lives of birds. But penguins seem to get the short end of the rope, if you will, because people think, oh, they're just dumb, they're non-expressive. They're not non-expressive. I got hit by a penguin. I was trying to count eggs in a nest, and their wings are bones, and they hit me in the shin, and I actually thought they broke my tibia. I mean, it
Oh,
hurt so much. And but they're birds. They're fully sentient beings with very rich cognitive and emotional lives. They know when not to jump in the water when there's a leopard seal or an orca around. But you also see them playing this game, that's saying, I don't want to be the first penguin to jump in the water. So some of them may be more aware than others that there's danger around, like, say, a killer whale or a leopard seal. And they'll just tootle around like I might, if I think, well, maybe, I don't know, I'm not the bravest person in the world, so I'm not going to be the first one to step into that situation. And they look around, and when they're looking around, you know that they're gathering a lot of information about the other penguins who are there. So that would be it. Fascinating, really fascinating animals and really hardy.
that's really interesting. I love that. And you just referred to them as sentient. And of course, these days we know that non-human animals are definitely sentient beings. And this applies obviously to the penguins, but it also applies to pet dogs and cats as well, doesn't it?
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, one of the key point hallmarks of ethology is careful observation. So when I started studies and when I brought students and research assistants into the field, you just spend time watching the animals. No notes, if you need binoculars, that's okay. But basically sit and watch them. Yeah. And so the more time you spend with animals, you learn them as individuals. And so what you might say is maladaptive. It might be at the species level, I suppose, but it may be a perfectly understandable response by an individual given the context, who's around, where they are they on their home territory where animals tend to be bolder? Are they around friends, or are they around people, or I guess animals are people, but are they around people who, or animals, I suppose, at a dog park with whom they feel comfortable or not? Did they have a bad night? Because I remember one dog came to the dog park who had been, a social butterfly. She was really withdrawn. She just wasn't her normal self. I think her name was Rose. And so I was watching them and I asked her guardian, like, what happened? And she said, well, she had a tummy ache last night. She pooped all over the house and she's not feeling well. I mean, so in other words, people could say, oh, there's something really wrong, or, you're wrong. Rose isn't usually this outgoing Facebook extrovert canine. And in fact, yeah, she was. She just had a bad night. So, right, it does apply to dogs and all other animals, that we just need to spend time watching them, appreciating their individuality, and not jumping to conclusions about what they can or cannot do. I mean, I know dogs can't fly, at least I've never seen one who can, but other than that, they have this incredible capacity for performing really unique behavior sometimes, and really they're richly socially aware. Yeah. And of course they're getting sounds, sights, and odors that we, thank goodness, probably are not aware of.
So as I mentioned earlier, this is a holiday episode, and something that people love about holidays, that I love about holidays, is the ritual aspect of it. So people who are watching our video may notice that Zazie and I are wearing red for the holidays.
Okay. Okay. I'm wearing my tie-dye pink.
Yeah. Which is perfect.
Also, a beautiful ritual.
It's a holiday. Yeah.
So we were wondering, do you think animals have rituals, and what have you seen in your observations of animals, and what do you enjoy about animal rituals?
Yeah, Caitlin O'Connell, who's an elephant expert, wrote a book on animal rituals. But yeah, I mean, once again, depends how you define it. But I have often think of inviting another dog to play is somewhat of a ritual. There could be a play soliciting signal. There could be sort of looking carefully at your potential play partner. Are they willing to play or not? Are they familiar or unfamiliar? Am I picking up signs that they don't want to play, for example? So I should just stop play bowing and barking and being a pain in their ears, if you will, and just go do something else. Mating, courtship could be rituals. In fact, people have written about courtship rituals. So I just think of, rituals being a pattern of behavior that is fairly obvious, but can vary. So people could say the play soliciting ritual, the courtship ritual. We're learning a lot more now about grief and mourning, and some animals going through rituals of grief and mourning. So that's the way I look at it. I mean, when I saw your question, and I remember just from years ago, because I think I majored in anthropology. I'm not quite sure what I majored in as undergrad. I think I majored in running track, but rituals there's a broad definitions, but I see something as a regularity. It's a ritual to have a certain meal on a certain day, or go to a house of worship if that's what you do. So that would be the ritual, but there's something regular about it. Greeting could be a ritual, because although I know there's a lot of exceptions, but the way in which dogs greet friends friends, enemies, and unfamiliar animals, for example. So Caitlin wrote a whole book on animal rituals, and
check it out.
Yeah. It's a great book. It's well illustrated, and she's a great writer. So yeah, I mean, they have rituals. I don't know that they have holiday rituals. I mean, the big joke among some people was for dogs who have guardians who they care for them, but they have zero idea of what the dog needs, that the dog would look forward to the ritual of the person going to the door, not picking up the leash and shutting the door so the dog could finally be the dog who they are.
Actually, I mean, I think you always seem so optimistic when you're writing about animals or talking about animals. And so I would like to know what keeps you optimistic about the human-animal relationship.
Well, one obvious thing would be my long-term friendship with Jane Goodall, just being a very close colleague, Scotch drinking buddy, and very close friend. And, I really miss her, but I really was thinking, because a lot of people have written me over the last month and a half, give or take, and was her genuine umbrella of hope, if you will, really facing difficult situations in lots of different lots of different contexts, and always remaining hopeful. On occasion, just, we would talk and, it would be really clear both of us had no idea how we were going to solve a particular situation, solve a particular problem. But Jane's influence was really important. I tend to focus on what I can do, not what I can't do. I mean, I just think it's a waste of time lamenting that I'm not going to be a pro football player. I'm just too big. But that's kind of the example I use for a lot of people. I'm not going to be a pro basketball player. But so there's what I can do. And my dad used to say, and he was the most optimistic person I've ever met, even through really tough times, there's no such thing as a bad day. They're all shades of good. So someday we all have crappy days, but instead of saying it's a crappy or a bad day, it may be a good on a scale of 1 to 10. It might be a 2, but it's not a bad day. And really, it's really stuck with me for a really long time that we all have certain gifts we could bring to the world, and we might as well focus on what we can do. And as either as people get older or they get, something happens and they become ill. I mean, it's hard, but and I think I could speak for Jane, just over people just complaining about what they can't do. And in terms of animals and animal well-being, just people going, oh, we can't do that. They'll never listen. It's for me as an athlete, it's like, well, I'm going to really train for an event and then saying, well, I'll never win. And I always say, if you don't train to win, you won't win. That's no guarantee you will. If you focus on what you can't do to help other animals or people, because we are animals, then you'll never or very rarely achieve what you want to achieve because you've already talked yourself out of the possibility of being successful. That's a mouthful.
Well, I think that optimism has helped you to make such a difference in the world. Thank you for joining us today, Marc. It's always such a pleasure to chat with you.
Well, thank you, and I hope you all have good holiday rituals.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
So something that we thought it would be fun to talk about on our holiday issue is this idea of rituals, because Christmas and the holiday season has a lot of rituals, and ritual is something that I think really brings us together as people, and is something that it's fascinating from an anthropological perspective, but it's also fun as a human. Carrying out these rituals is something that's just fun for us. So I know when we Zazie and I were talking about what rituals would we like to talk about from our own lives, I have, I came up with one, which I'll talk about in a second, that I thought was something that was a nice ritual for me. But also I started thinking about food and how, cooking food, creating food, the types of food that we select for our families or our friends for various holidays is such a, it's imbued with ritual for a lot of us. And as I was telling Zazie about this, we were texting one day, I realized that I was in the kitchen and I was making food and all of my dogs were sitting on the floor around me. So, and for the people who are on video, you can see Archer, my dog behind me on the couch, is about 150 pounds. He's not a small presence, bodily wise. So he was laying on the floor. His sister Keithley, who's also, 80 or 90 pounds, was lying on the floor. Soleil, who is much smaller, but still not a handful. She's about 40 pounds or something, was also in the kitchen. And they just rest there comfortably. And the reason is because we give them food when we're cooking. And I know this is something that I think used to be quite considered quite, moralized. People moralized quite a bit about creating a dog who pesters you for food. But we have just, settled into this, and we love having our dogs in the kitchen. We just sort of gently step around them. I don't like it when I'm really busy or flustered, but when I'm just doing my thing and enjoying the ritual of making food, I like having my animals there.
Yeah, definitely. And it is one of those things that used to be frowned on. And I'm kind of glad things have moved on. It's like people used to say all sorts of things that we know don't apply anymore. You can have your dog on the settee to cuddle with you if you want. And I think it's awful that people used to feel guilty for that. And you can share your food with your dog if you want to, so long as it's something that's not going to be poisonous for them. And I
Right.
have to say, Pepper is a very good companion in the kitchen too. He especially likes the vegetables. Well, I mean, we don't cook a lot of meat in this house, but he especially likes like a really big chunk of zucchini, and he will carry it away and love to chew on that. And the cat likes to hang around too, but she's more interested when we're actually eating. She would love to come and walk all over the table, and she's watching our plates. Actually, I wrote about this in Purr, and I thought people would find it funny, hopefully, that she sometimes comes and she's looking to see what are you eating? Is there something that I can have? And she especially loves toast crumbs. So if I've been eating toast, she's watching closely to see can she get some toast crumbs.
I've seen it on sort of like in the meme world as cheese tax, which I think I adore. Just this idea that that not only that your dog can have a piece of cheese when you're cutting cheese, but that it's sort of a bit of a tithe.
Yeah, you have to keep the pets happy.
Yeah. They're just their little faces right there. Yeah. So the
Yeah, and
other
if you
sorry, go
think
ahead.
about it though, food is an important part of our relationship with other people. So it makes sense that it's an important part of our relationship with our dogs and cats as well.
Yeah, that is absolutely true, isn't it? And it is the sharing aspect of food, I think, is so pan-human. And I think sort of scooping up dogs and bringing them to be within that sort of set of who we aim our rituals at it's true. It feels very caring.
Mm. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely.
So the other ritual that I thought about was I like decorating trees. I like having a tree. I like, picking a tree on my dog walks because we have quite a lot of forest on our land, picking a tree, a little tree, and then bring it into the house and decorating it. My wife, Yoan, on the other hand, typically is not like she's fine to have it done, but she's just a little bit like, "Oh, why? Why? There, I think there's the mess. And also she doesn't necessarily like cutting down trees that don't have a particular purpose, like to heat our house or to clear land for some purpose. So this year I was looking out the window when we were talking about whether or not we were going to bring a tree in, and I just thought, oh, we should decorate one of the beautiful spruce trees in our yard. So then I just jumped on this track and ran with it, and I have a big shopping list. There's going to be lights. There's going to be garland all the way around the trees, and she thought I had picked one that was like 30 or 40 feet tall. We both said the one out in that direction, and I had picked a much smaller one, and she's like, I don't even think the tractor bucket is going to reach up there. You're going to need a big long stick to get to the top. But decorating is going to be, I've decided to start a new ritual, decorating a nice tree out in our yard that people, when you drive in our driveway, it's right there.
I love that. I think that's really fun. And I like to see lights at this time of year. And we've got some lights in the trees in our yard, and our neighbour across the street has lights as well. So we started them early this year. We started them kind of mid-November. We decided, well, it's dark. It was dark and rainy. Like it's meant to be cold, but it's not. It's warm, wet, and rainy. We thought, well, never mind. The world needs cheering up. We need cheering up. So we'll we'll start them being on already. So if someone's driving up our street, they get to the point where we and our neighbours have all the lights on outside already, and that's very nice. We actually have a Christmas Eve ritual, which is new since about 10 years ago. And so, being British, we like Christmas cake at Christmas, and it doesn't seem to be a terribly popular thing here. And we started making our own. I say originally it was me, but my husband actually is an amazing cook. So now he is the one who makes the Christmas cake, and he makes it sometime in October. And when I say he makes it, he also makes the marzipan and the icing, and he even dries the orange peel to go in it to makes his own candied orange peel, which is like just amazing. So he makes this
Wow.
Christmas cake, and then over the next, like he makes it mid-October, and then over the next few months, he's kind of regularly pouring brandy on top of it. And then he decorates it with the marzipan and icing. And then on Christmas Eve, we have a slice of Christmas cake and some champagne. And because I'm from Yorkshire, it has to be Wensleydale cheese that goes with the Christmas cake, because Wensleydale cheese goes really well with any kind of fruit cake. So that is the part that the pets can have a little tiny bit of, because they absolutely love it. And obviously for the cat, it's only a really, really tiny, tiny bit of cheese because we don't want to make her ill. And the dog gets a slightly bigger piece. But yeah, so that's kind of like the proper start of Christmas on Christmas Eve. And the pets like it too. So
Nice. I love it.
it's a very English kind of tradition. And the recipe for the cake is actually from a 1970s book published by Good Housekeeping, the Cookery Year. So it's an old fashioned recipe, a proper old fashioned cake. It feels very nice.
Oh, I love that. That's a wonderful tradition.
Yeah, it's fun. So yeah, and I think the trees, I love the trees. I would love to see a photo of your trees in the front yard when you've got it all decorated. That would be very nice to see. I think great for visitors to the house.
Excellent. I will send it to you.
Cool. Okay, and so then we're going to talk to Erica Beckwith. So let's go chat with her. Um, Erica's episode before was about tricks training for dogs and cats, and that was really, really popular. And Erica also did a wonderful tricks class just for Barkfest, which we took part in, and it was so much fun. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with her again. Erica Beckwith is the owner operator of A Matter of Manners Dog Training in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She is an amazing positive reinforcement trainer who first got into dogs as a volunteer at Busan Abandoned Pet Sanctuary in South Korea. After moving back to America, Erica studied at the prestigious Academy for Dog Trainers, where she got her CTC. And Erica is also a CBCCKA and a fear-free certified professional.
Yeah, and Erica loves cats too. And actually, Apricot is just making himself known, so I had to give him the elevator lift up onto my chair. So Erica loves cats too, and she graduated with a certificate in advanced feline behavior for cat professionals with distinction from International Cat Care. Erica loves teaching tricks, and we both love the videos she shared of her cute dogs doing tricks.
Hi, Erica. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me back.
We're thrilled because your previous episode was so popular and you shared so many amazing tips with us that we thought this time we could talk about how to take festive photos of your pet, and you can maybe share some tips with us for that. So, what kind of situations make for the best holiday photos with pets?
Kind of depends on the pet, but I really like things in front of a tree, or what most importantly is that the animal's relaxed. If they're stressed out, if we're, putting them in costumes or situations that they're nervous, you're going to get scared looking dogs or scared looking cats, and those aren't cute pictures. And also, we don't want those animals to be scared. So, relaxed environments where the animal's already feeling comfortable at home in front of their own tree or on a walk in front of Christmas lights, those are some of the best ones for me.
We notice that sometimes people like to have their pet in a festive hat or a cute little costume. We're all costume lovers here, I think. So, what kind of training do people need to do to get their cat used to wearing accessories?
The best thing people can do is go really slow with their animal, especially if their pet's already concerned about having costumes put on, which so many are. I mean, people get lucky with dogs or cats that love being dressed up, but not everybody is like that. If possible, starting them as kittens or puppies and getting them really comfortable getting dressed up from day one. It's something I do with every puppy I work with is dress up. But also, if a dog's a little older or a cat's a little older, using a lot of treats is a fantastic way to help your dog or cat comfortably get used to wearing something. Making sure we're not forcing it on the animal. So even if we have to start with the dog or cat just putting their head through the neck hole of a cute little sweater, or some hats have the string thing underneath it. If we can just have them put their head through a few times, then maybe we put it through and place it on their head and give treats and take it off. Slow, steady, let the animal control the pace of the training. That's really the best way. Don't just sit down day one and think you're going to get a cute picture of putting the hat on first time they've ever worn it. Probably not.
Yeah, so slow is better. But of course, some dogs or cats, probably especially cats, are not going to be at all happy wearing a hat or any kind of costume. So, do you have any suggestions for dressing the scene around them so that you can still get a cute photo, for example, with ornaments or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And also don't forget there's Photoshop. I mean, you can Photoshop a cute little sweater on your cat after teaching them to do a really cute pose in front of the tree. That's cuter than having them super dressed up and just a picture of them dressed up. So having them, under the tree or by an ornament, or even creating a little, like not a doorway, but just some kind of frame for them that they can sit under that has maybe lights or tinsel on it. I don't mean a big DIY project, just a little frame thing can be so cute for them. But even at the tree, there you go. They're under the tree. They don't have to always be dressed up. Or you can put a little sticker on them after you get the picture.
Cute.
If someone wants to get a really nice photo of their pet with people, what would you suggest that people do to help them pose well with their pets?
Well, there's a couple different options for that, of course. If in our house, we like to get pictures of our dogs with us facing the camera. So that's always going to be a little harder than if somebody's taking the picture and can prompt your dog or cat to look at you. So really good idea is to have sounds playing in the background. Doesn't work as well when your old dogs start going deaf like mine, but having the TV on or something on behind the camera so that it's playing dog sounds or high-pitched sounds or doorbell sounds, unless your dog's going to bark at that. Sometimes your dog to look in that direction while you're sitting with your dog or holding your dog or cat or posing with your dog or cat is fantastic.
Awesome. And if someone has a pet who is especially shy, what are your tips for that situation?
Depends. Do they not like to be held? Then let's teach them to do some kind of cute pose on a box, or if they're comfortable being held, but they don't like to be the camera in their face, then first we need to teach them that it's comfortable and fun to have a camera in front of them. So we can help them slowly get comfortable with their picture being taken or being held, or standing on a box is really cute. It just kind of depends on how shy are they. If they're really fearful and they don't like human interaction yet, let's skip that and do that next year. But if they're just a little nervous about the camera, we can just do some conditioning, classical conditioning, camera up treats, camera up treats, camera up treats until they think it's really great to have the camera up in front of them.
Oh, amazing. And I know I almost wish we could scroll through your social media feed because you have some of the best holiday photos ever. They're such an inspiration and they're funny and cute and the dogs just look so happy. So on that note, as dog trainers, we often see pictures on social media, or in advertisements for stuff where the pictures kind of make us squirm. So what kind of holiday pictures do you wish you'd never see again?
Well, kids and dogs is one big one where, I mean, I'm always like clutching my pearls when I see like kids sitting on dogs or squeezing dogs. Plenty of dogs love their children, of course, but there's a lot of pictures out there where the dog looks so stressed out and that child's face, the baby's face is right up against the dog's face and they're squeezing them or they're dressing them up or whatever. I'm a huge proponent of dressing up dogs who like to be dressed up, but with babies sitting there and putting stuff on the dog or wrapping lights around a dog or cat, that kind of stuff makes me really nervous. The most important thing is that the animal has a choice to be there and is comfortable and relaxed. So any kind of picture where the dog is or cat is clearly not enjoying the costume, they've got their ears pinned back, their eyes are big. I wish those pictures would just go away from my algorithm because those stress me out big time.
Definitely. And as Kristi said, you have some amazing photos on your own social media feed. And I will put links in the show notes so that people can go and have a look if they would like to look, because there are so many cute photos there. But what are some of your favorite holiday photos of pets that you've either taken yourself or seen?
I mean, so not to brag, but so many favorites that I have. It's clearly important to me, but so some of my favorites. I do a lot of trick training already, so that really helps. The more trick training you do in your life and the more silly little things you teach your dog, the more opportunities you're going to have for really cute pictures when it comes to holiday season. So some of my favorite pictures, and actually going back to some cute pictures to take with people, I love a classic selfie shot or anything with the dog's paws up on a person's body. So any picture that you see that's out there of me and my dogs, if they are on me, like there's pictures of Diego up on my shoulder or Miles with his paws up on me or both of them pawing at me or whatever it may be, those are some of my favorites. And I really love, there's one picture in particular of Diego and Miles in front of the Christmas tree, dressed in their sweaters, their Christmas sweaters, with Diego's paw around Miles. That's one of my favorite, and that's a trick that Diego that was his special, that was his own thing. I didn't teach him that. He just, anytime you asked for his paw, if Miles was anywhere nearby, he would scoop him up. So we took advantage of that. So those are my favorites. Or any kind of picture where I love a dog paws up on people's shoulder or their chin down on their shoulder or in front of a tree, or those are my favorite. Or actually where everybody's looking happy and laughing. I love those.
Yes, that makes such a difference. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of those tips with us so that our listeners can get some really cute photos of their pets over the next few weeks. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
And we wish you a very happy festive season and a wonderful new year.
You too.
Okay, so it's time for the book section, and we always end with books, and we've got a couple of books each, I believe, to recommend. So shall I go first? I have been reading, I'm going to hold it up, A Woman Among Wolves by Diane K. Boyd, and it is a memoir, my journey through 40 years of wolf recovery. So she went to university. She decided she wanted to become a wolf biologist, absolutely in love with wolves. And this is a memoir of her work, many decades of work with wild wolves. And so it starts, she's like her graduate work is she does some work on coyotes, but she's also helping with a wolf ecology project in at the time, kind of the last place in America where there were wild wolves left. And so it's also the story of the recovery of wolves and how a wolf from Canada went down into the US and started, basically, it became the beginning of many more wolves being there. So that part of the story is really positive, but I feel like I do have to warn you that obviously it's about wild animals. Nature is red in tooth and claw, and also there are hunters involved too. So not all of the stories in the book are happy ones by any means. It's actually quite riveting. So she spends a lot of her time, she traps wolves to put radio collars on them, and then she follows them. And also she just spends a lot of time, like in the winter, skiing around this beautiful landscape, looking for signs of wolves. And at the beginning, when she's not so good yet at making sure that it's only wolves that she catches in the traps, she catches other animals as well. There's a story in there where they accidentally caught a grizzly bear in the trap and had to release that. So, yikes. It is quite riveting. It is a good read. I've really enjoyed reading it. And actually, this book was recommended to me by Rebecca. So, Rebecca, if you're listening, thank you for suggesting this to me. I've loved it.
So the first book I'll talk about is one that I just finished, let me find so it's called 4 Days a Week, the life-changing solution for reducing employee stress, improving well-being, and working smarter, by Juliet B. Shore. So I'm not sure. I know you can put in an image, but
Cool. Yeah.
yeah. So I randomly picked this book, and it. I mean, the title kind of sums up the entire contents of the book. It's about reducing work hours. So not having like longer days, 4 days a week, and still working 40 hours. It's about working 32-hour week for the same pay and without reducing your productivity. So it wasn't like a how-to book. It didn't give. There was some sort of strategies about how the various places that she's worked with, or the team of people on this research project had worked with, but mostly it was like about, does it work? And the answer is, I mean, it won't shock you because of, the fact that it was a book, but it does work. And just this fast, I mean, it's about people, and people are fascinating to us as people, right? But just how shockingly you can actually get everything done that you get done in a work week done in one less day, and just the incredible benefits it has for people's mental health, for their physical health, and then also for the company, for productivity. It either stays the same or it goes up typically, which shocks me. But then I think about my own work day and I'm like, yeah, I can kind of see it. I mean, I feel like I work pretty hard, but I also don't necessarily work every single hour that I'm in my office, so I just found myself kind of flabbergasted and also very excited, because it seems like, they did quite a big study with a bunch of different types of work, healthcare included, manufacturing, like things where you're like, well, it wouldn't work in this industry. It actually does, quite insanely. Like it does work in all of these different industries. A lot of it, though, is white collar, information production, which is what I do. So I'm like, well, this seems relevant. Yeah, so it doesn't make anything worse, and it makes so many things better, that I just was like, oh, should I, I work for myself. Should I, is this something I should consider for myself? Imagine having a whole extra day of a weekend. It was good for parents. It was good for, just all of these people, industries, demographics. And then they were talking about how some countries are considering this move very actively, and some unions are actively sort of suggesting this move. So there is a sense in the book that this is something that's coming, and something that we'll all be benefiting from, I think, in the near future. And then there was the history part about how we used to, in fact, work many, many more hours in the week. So the 5-day week was something that unions fought for. So, I think it's reasonable to have a little moment of saying thank you to unions for getting us the reduced work hours that we have now. But also that doesn't mean that the 40-hour work week is good for people, because it's not, So yeah, that was a fascinating, I listened to it as an audiobook. So a fascinating listen, interesting to hear about people, and interesting to hear some of the, I think that one of the statistics that they sort of quoted was about really high powered, I think it was lawyers, but maybe it was something in finances. I can't, or one of those, careers that you think takes a lot of big thinking. And they only really apparently work actively for a couple hours a day, and when they log the time that they spend doing actual work, it was only a couple hours a day. And I'm like, I can kind of see it, because when you get into that zone where you're not being distracted by all of these other things that come up in the middle of the day, I can see that it would really only be a couple hours. So they were like, well, why don't you just focus that time a bit better? Find some strategies to do the work that you need to do, and then you can have this time too. And as I age too, there's more medical appointments, and I got to go to the eye doctor again, and all this stuff. And when am I going to fit that in? It would be lovely to have a whole day off during the work week. Yeah.
Yeah, it would for sure. That sounds really interesting. And when I think about my granddad, who used to work like 12-hour days down the mill, definitely less time working seems to be very good for people. So I like that idea of it becoming a 4-day work week for sure. So
and
my
it used
next
to be
book,
a 6-day work week.
Yeah,
I didn't know that, but it
yeah,
used to be a 6-day work week. Yeah, crazy.
yeah, that's right. Just Sundays off. So yeah, we definitely owe thanks to the people who campaigned that we don't have to work 6 days, 6 days a week.
For sure.
I picked two books with blue covers, and that book had a blue cover. So anyway, my next book also has a blue cover. It is The Passengers on the Hankyu Line. It's actually a really cute cover. Let me hold that up so you can see a
Oh,
cute
little
doggy at the
dog.
bottom.
Hmm.
It's by Hiro Arikawa, who is the author of The Traveling Cat Chronicles. And the idea behind the book is it's about a railway line and the people who get the train on that railway line. So it's near Osaka and Kobe, and it's just like a small commuter line on a fixed route. And the first half of the book is going one direction on that rail line and picking out some of the people on the train and telling stories about them. And it's a really fun book. So it's a really nice novel to read. And the second half of the book is the return journey 6 months later. So it's kind of finishing off the stories that started on the first part. And there are some really interesting characters in it of different ages as well. And sometimes they get off and they explore the station. So one of them, um, another passenger on the train says, "Oh, why don't you get off at this station? You'll enjoy. This is a really lovely town." And so she gets off and she wanders around, and we get to read about that. And then in the second half of the book, we learn what a difference that actually ended up making in her life. And there's a nice love story in there, which I guess is the main story. Is this love story between two university students, and there are school kids that people are quite outspoken as well. Sometimes they're a bit rude to other passengers on the train. It's a really cute, fun, adorable kind of story. It's a really nice, cozy kind of read. So I absolutely loved it, and it's been translated into English by Alice and Markin Powell. So yeah, it's a good read.
Very cool. So the next book that I read was, it's called Dare I Say It? Everything I Wish I'd Known About Menopause by Naomi Watts, who's an actor. And again, I know you'll be able to, sadly, not a blue cover. But yeah, so this book is, it's written by Naomi Watts, who went through perimenopause quite early in her life. And because I'm perimenopausal now, I think my social media feed was sort of like, you're 51, started showing me, and learning more about menopause and the fact that we don't learn really anything about it, and the medical system has very much mistreated menopause as a thing, and menopausal women for many years, and women in general, of course, which I think everyone should be aware of by now. So having her sort of jump around and talk to different people and sort of tie it into her life, it was an interesting read. It was a good read. It made me sort of start to bookmark other menopause books in the library that I think I'll also want to dive into. But yeah, it was definitely, I think menopause is having a bit of a moment in the media, and I think it's so overdue that it's ridiculous. Like I sometimes walk around with just a bit of sort of burbling rage just about the little care that is given towards menopause and towards menopausal women, as something that every single person with a uterus who reaches this age will go through. So a lot of people, yeah. So that was my next book.
Great choice. It definitely needs to be talked about a lot more. So yeah, I'm glad that there's more information, more books about this kind of thing, because like when I was growing up, no one talked about it. So it's good that it's having a bit of a moment, I think.
For sure. Yeah. If anyone talked about it when I was a kid, it was to make fun of menopausal women. Like, it was a cruel kind of humor. And now looking back, now it's even a little bit more bubbling rage. And they say, oh, you might have emotional differences as you hit menopause. I'm like, maybe. Hear me out. Maybe it's not something that's inherent in us.
Well, thank you for sharing those books with me. and I will put links to all of them in the show notes, as well as links to all of our guests, so you can learn more about them if you would like to, and more about their books as well if you would like to get hold of their books, which we recommend all of their books too. And this is the end of our holiday episode. So thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed it, do let us know so that we'll know whether or not to do this again in future. And if you have a moment over the holidays, please take the time to write a review of us on your favorite podcast app. We would really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And thanks for being such a great audience. We always love it when we get to hear from you. So happy holidays and a very happy new year.
Yes, take care, everyone.
Bye.